It's not just another day in your life. Things are changing for the better. At Comcast, we see those changes, and we're thinking about how we use technology today to live, work, learn, and play. And we're building for the future now, so we're better prepared for the wants and needs of tomorrow. That's why Comcast is rolling out multi-gig internet speeds to more than 50 million homes and businesses before the end of 2025, making our already industry-leading network even faster, smarter, greener, and more reliable. Over the decades, Comcast has been your partner, working hard to serve your community, and will continue to be your partner. We're expanding our gigabits, so you can enjoy the tiny bits that matter most.
I'm Brandon Jones, host of the Teen Mental Health Podcast, It Is Not Your Fault.
And I'm Lambert Fisher, family therapist and host of the Diversity Dude podcast.
We're not always going to be all right, and that's what makes us human. Often, when we're in pain or even thinking of suicide, we may not want others to know, but you'll feel better if you talk to someone. And you can do that safely and anonymously.
We can recognize when loved ones are not okay. They bottle up, they isolate, they're angry.
That's why we want you to know about 988, Minnesota Lifeline, for someone you're worried about or even yourself.
Anyone with an emotional or mental health related need can call, chat, or text 988 for free, confidential support. You can connect with 988 to discuss difficulty with money, relationships, anxiety, your job, concerns about drug or alcohol use, grief support, figuring out your identity, and more.
You don't even have to identify yourself or the person you're calling about, and no insurance is needed.
988 is available 24/7 year-round and can interpret in more than 200 languages.
So take a brave step. Call or text 988.
Or chat at 988lifeline.org. You don't have to do this alone.
It's Not Your Fault is a podcast for parents, caregivers, and young people navigating the world and its challenges. Here's your host, Brandon Jones.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Jones, and on today's episode, we are going to discuss intrusive thoughts in teenagers. This topic has come up due to a request from a listener of the podcast that struggled with intrusive thoughts themselves as a teenager. And now that they are an adult, they wonder, how are teens dealing with intrusive thoughts today, and what are some of the things that they can do to help teens who may be struggling with intrusive thoughts that are within their lives. So that's what we'll be discussing today on the podcast, is intrusive thoughts. Now, the first thing we might want to figure out, or at least discuss, is what are intrusive thoughts? What are they? Who has them? Is this a normal thing for teens to go through or to experience? Those are the things that we probably should cover first on today's episode. So intrusive thoughts are thoughts that can be distressing, especially when teens are already navigating a very interesting period throughout their life. It's a period of high emotions and high cognitive growth. And when you have those two things happening at the same time, plus you add on culture, plus you add on identity formation, plus you add on politics, not just national and local politics, no. The politics of school buildings and sports teams and social clubs and dating, all those things can lead to what we call intrusive thoughts. These are unwelcome thoughts, often disturbing, unwanted, and distressing. And it can make your teen's life even harder, and it can make them focus on things they don't want to focus on. It can make it harder for them to maintain relationships. It can even make it harder for them to maintain and manage their day-to-day activities. So understanding these thoughts and how to support teens when they have these is pretty much, I think, a key skill set if it shows up in the young person that you care about's life. So for caregivers, parents, teachers, and for those mental health professionals out there, this podcast is going to be helpful for you. Be sure to spread it and share it with folks that you care about, so that if anyone that they come across is having intrusive thoughts, they can help themselves. And also, if you're a young person listening to this podcast and you're having intrusive thoughts, these tips can be helpful for you as well. So, one of the key things to understand is that intrusive thoughts are involuntary, meaning they just show up when they show up. You don't have to invite them, they come on in. They wipe their feet, their muddy shoes, their muddy boots all over your nice carpet. They get on your couch and they hop on your couch like Tom Cruise did years ago when he showed up on Oprah. Intrusive thoughts are not friendly, they just happen. They can be repetitive thoughts. They can be very unsettling, and sometimes they can even be bizarre. They can just be weird things that you're like, where is this even coming from? Why is this happening to me? And why am I thinking this way? So, a lot of these thoughts often fall into four categories. The first one is fear-based thoughts. This is when you have fear of things being done to you or when things can be done to other people. The next area that these thoughts kind of circle around is what we call obsessive worry. Obsessive worry or worries. And in this space and place, this is where you have a lot of thoughts around unlikely and irrational events. So, for example, and I'm just going to make an extreme example here. I live in the state of Minnesota. It is very irrational and unlikely that we're going to have a tsunami in Minnesota. However, we definitely can have snowstorms. We can have tornadoes. We definitely can have severe thunderstorms. We had some of those this summer. But obsessively worrying about something that is very unlikely to take place in your life can show up in the intrusive way, and you can have intrusive thoughts, and that can increase your anxiety, and sometimes it can even increase depressive like symptoms. Another telltale sign of intrusive thoughts: sexually inappropriate or disturbing images, where you're playing these things in your mind. Now, these things can be influenced by various different forms of media, life experiences, or even just communication with others, where you can have these kind of graphic images or graphic things take place in your mind. They can be very intrusive. This happens a lot with people who go through unfortunate, assault. I would say it can be sexual assault or physical abuse experiences. Sometimes those images and things can be replayed in someone's head, or maybe they've seen a disturbing movie, or they've seen something on the stream that was disturbing, and now that it's replaying over and over and over again. And then the fourth kind of domain or area of intrusive thoughts is what we call fear of losing control. And this one, I think, definitely shows up for a lot of young people. This fear that they don't have control over their lives, or they're going to lose control, lose the little bit of control they believe they even have. This is a huge one for folks, is the feeling like they don't have control. A lot of the young people that I've dealt with in my counseling career that have had depressive symptoms, a lot of them dealt with this kind of concept of fear of losing control. They didn't all have intrusive thoughts, but a lot of them, and the ones who did have intrusive thoughts, that was the one that I would say I've seen the most in my career. So for most teens, these thoughts are fleeting, right? But for others, they can be very persistent. They can lead to significant levels of anxiety, and sometimes they can even lead to obsessive compulsive tendencies. Doesn't mean they're quite OCD, but they have some tendencies that are. So, where does this all lead to? Well, it leads to increased levels of anxiety. It can lead to low levels of self esteem. It can lead to social withdrawal, and it can lead to avoidant behaviors. So, when you have someone who has low self esteem, sometimes they can feel like they're out of control, like they just can't control things. That's the one that I was talking about. We see it a lot with young people. Social withdrawal is usually because of the fear of being judged or even embarrassed due to a condition or a thought process or just how you show up just as an individual. And then the avoidance behavior is to prevent perceived risk related to the intrusive thoughts. So they just try to stay away from people because, oh, people are thinking about, what my shirt looks like. Or people are wondering how I talk, or I have a lisp, or they're looking at my face, or whatever. You can obsess over almost anything. Almost anything. So why teens experience intrusive thoughts? Why do they go through this? And some of these things may actually surprise you. One that we don't think about often is hormonal changes. Yes, hormones. We know this as parents and caregivers and youth workers as well, that these hormonal changes can bring out all sorts of emotions for young people. And those emotions can range from what is going on in the world to, oh, this is a very pleasant young person. I mean, it's a vast range of what those emotions can do. But those hormonal changes, and you add those to the brain developing in an adolescent, and it can definitely amplify the stress and the anxiety that a young person may go through. The next thing is high expectations, the pressure of being a young person, a student or a student athlete, right? The pressures of doing similar things of your as your siblings or your peers or your neighbors. That constant pressure creates a level of tension, and that tension can bring on intrusive thoughts. One that we already kind of talked about, but I didn't label it just yet, is exposure to trauma. So, or those adverse experiences that may show up can definitely result in a heightened level of obsessive thinking and a heightened level of fears as well. And then the obvious thing, and we save it for last, is mental health conditions. You may have a young person who just has mental health condition. They may have an early onset of OCD. They may have an anxiety disorder. They may have PTSD due to an experience that they've had that was unfortunate. All these things can exacerbate intrusive behaviors and, or sorry, not intrusive behaviors, intrusive thoughts. However, I should say that was a Freudian slip. Intrusive thoughts can turn into irrational behavior. So you can see young people start to do things where you're like, why are they doing that? And it's probably because they're thinking through it and their thought process may be intrusive. So, as we get ready to close out today's podcast, and I gave you some context on intrusive thoughts, let's talk about some of the things we can do to help the young people in our lives. And I always love to give you about 7 things. I'm gonna give you 6 today. Most of these things cost you no money. One thing I want to do with this podcast, and I haven't really named it, I just kind of do it, is I want to make sure that all the strategies and tips, not all of them, most of the strategies and tips that I give are things that you can apply today. They don't cost you money, but what they do cost you is intentionality, time, and patience. And I believe that if we want a world where our young people are mentally and emotionally well, those are the 3 biggest currencies that we have to do to invest in the well-being of our children. We have to be very intentional. We have to invest time, and we have to invest our patience. When we can do that, I think young people have a better opportunity to be as well as they can be. So, what can we do? Here's number one: create a safe space for open conversations. I pretty much add that to everything that I talk about because, believe it or not, a lot of young people don't feel or even believe that they can have a open and transparent conversation with a caring adult. We have to provide these spaces to the best of our ability. These spaces may be in person, these spaces may be digital, they may be in a notebook. Wherever they are, make sure that whatever method of communication works for the young person in your life, you are allowing them to express themselves and they know that they can connect to you that way. Educate yourself on intrusive thoughts is number two. So just getting some basic information. You can use this podcast. You can Google other information. One of the tips that I like to tell youth workers, parents, and caregivers is go to YouTube or TikTok. TikTok is another wealth of information. It can be a little overwhelming because there's so many things happening, but YouTube has a ton of information where you can even hear from people who have their own intrusive thoughts as well. Another one, and this one you may say, how am I supposed to do this? I'm not a therapist. Well, believe it or not, you can do this too. Teach cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. And I'll probably have to actually do an episode on CBT so people actually know what that is. And it's not as intimidating, but you can just search cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. Just put that in your favorite search engine and you're going to find so much information. It may be overwhelming, a lot of free tools and even worksheets that you can utilize. I think CBT is a great therapeutic approach, and it doesn't always have to be administered by a licensed mental health professional. You can use those tools today to help you. Um, but I always leave that towards the end is talking to somebody for professional help, but we'll get there. Number four, Introduce mindfulness practices. You want to make sure that you're using mindfulness practices. Those are subjective based on the individual. There's tons of resources out there on which mindfulness practices make the most sense. Is it meditation? Is it breathing? Is it moving your body? Is it sensory things? Whatever that may be, definitely find out what works for you. Number 5 is the one that is in everything as well, is normalize seeking professional help. Go to a school counselor, go to the coach, go to the mental health provider, go to the local clinic, go to your primary care physician, go to somebody that can get you connected or do the work themselves to help you continue to move forward and address those intrusive thoughts. And then the last thing you can do, which kind of goes with the first thing you can do, is make sure you have a supportive environment. A lot of the things that teens are expressing is because they are responding to the environments that they're in. So make sure that your environment is supportive, it's non-judgmental, and your young person feels as comfortable as they can to express what they need. So with that, that's a little bit on intrusive thoughts and young people. It's something that happens. I think intrusive thoughts show up in many of our lives, but when they are persistent and they are intense, that's when we really need to pay attention to them, because if you don't, things can go very haywire very quickly. So with that, I'm going to close out today's podcast. Again, I'm Brandon Jones. This is It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. If you like today's episode, there's 3 things that you can do. The first thing is you can go to our Facebook page. Go to Facebook, go to the search bar, type in It's Not Your Fault podcast. You can find the article that I wrote on intrusive thoughts in teens, other episodes, and other great resources on Facebook in the Facebook group It Is Not Your Fault podcast. The second place, you can reach out to me directly on my own website. That's jegna.org, JEGNA.org. You can get to me at my website. So that's jegna.org. And if you like this podcast, there's a good chance you're going to like other podcasts on the network that we're on called Shaletta Makes Me Laugh. Go to ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com to find myself and a plethora of other great podcasters with quality information to help you get through your day-to-day, whether that's professionally or personally. You want to check us out at ShalettaMakesUsLaugh.com. And with that, be safe, be constructive, be well. I'm Brandon Jones, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
Mark your calendar for October 17th. That's Open House Day at Summit Academy OIC. And that's where your next career begins. In just 20 weeks, Summit Academy can prepare you to be a medical administrative assistant, IT specialist, carpenter, electrician, or financial services professional. These are good paying jobs in high demand in the Twin Cities. Summit Academy will not only prepare you for a job with advancement opportunities, they'll help you connect with employers and hiring managers. That's right, Summit Academy has a list of local employer partners ready and eager to hire Summit graduates. At the open house, you'll meet Summit instructors and staff. These incredible people will guide you through the entire process, from application to graduation. And if you're looking to earn your GED, Summit can help with that. Come to Summit Academy's open house, located at 935 Olson Memorial Highway in North Minneapolis. Find out more at saoic.org. And we'll see you October 17th from 3 to 5 p.m.
The November election is coming, and adults with autism, you are eligible to participate. As long as you're 18 by November 5th, a U.S. citizen, and have no restrictions to court order, you can exercise your precious right to vote. There are many ways Minnesota makes this process comfortable for you. Right now, you can vote in person at an early voting center. Early voting centers are less busy in this time leading up to Election Day, which means fewer lines and activities. That may make you feel more comfortable. Or you can request an absentee ballot and vote by mail. That's right. You can cast your ballot without leaving your home. You can also vote without leaving your car. If you choose curbside voting on Election Day on November 5th, election judges will bring your ballot right to your vehicle. Once you mark it, they'll put it in the ballot box for you. Make your plan to make your voice heard this election season. Your vote counts. You can learn more at mnvotes.gov. That's mnvotes.gov. I'm Brandon Jones, host of the Teen Mental Health Podcast, It Is Not Your Fault.
And I'm Lambert Fisher, family therapist and host of the Diversity Dude podcast.
We're not always going to be all right, and that's what makes us human. Often, when we're in pain or even thinking of suicide, we may not want others to know, but you'll feel better if you talk to someone, and you can do that safely and anonymously.
We can recognize when loved ones are not okay. They bottle up, they isolate, they're angry.
That's why we want you to know about 988 Minnesota Lifeline for someone you're worried about or even yourself.
Anyone with an emotional or mental health related need can call, chat, or text 988 for free, confidential support. You can connect with 988 to discuss difficulty with money, relationships, anxiety, your job, concerns about drug or alcohol use, grief support, figuring out your identity, and more.
You don't even have to identify yourself or the person you're calling about, and no insurance is needed.
988 is available 24/7 year-round and can interpret in more than 200 languages.
So take a brave step. Call or text 988.
Or chat at 988lifeline.org. You don't have to do this alone.
If you live in an older home, it may contain lead-based paint on walls, woodwork, and windows. Even more bad news, lead exposure can be dangerous to young children and impact their brain development. And now, the good news. Hennepin County will fix lead hazards in your home at no cost to you.
We were worried because of the paint in the windows in the bedroom. They were peeling and chipping, and we know that when paint peels and chips and it looks a certain way, that's possibly lead. We were worried for our children more so than anything.
Eligible homes can qualify for up to $15,000 in upgrades. You may even qualify for new energy-efficient windows. Don't worry, Hennepin County has a trusted list of pre-approved contractors. You won't even have to find companies with correct licenses or certifications.
I've just done a test and it's positive. So we know that this is lead-based paint, and then we know it's a hazard because it's creating dust every time this window moves and opens. And if you look in here, that's just full of lead paint chips.
You won't have to stay with your cousin while you're getting the lead out. Hennepin County even pays for you and your family to stay in a hotel while the work is underway. The last good news is how easy it is to apply. Just go to hennepin.us/lead control to get started.
I'm really happy with the program. We can go to bed knowing that our children are safe.
That's hennepin.us/lead control. Tell your friends about it.